How long does Fani Willis have to make this decision?
Well, Mika, one would expect that she would make it very quickly. Keep in mind, I want to just give you the larger context of all of this. For the past 2.5 months, this has been all that we have been talking about. We haven't been talking about the facts of the case against Donald Trump. That really has essentially ground to a halt. This has eclipsed that totally. So what the judge here is saying, and it should be noted that this can certainly be taken as a win for the DA's office, but basically what the judge is saying that, okay, get rid of Nathan Wade, get rid of this appearance, and then therefore you guys can move on with this case and kind of get out of this pause position. A couple of things that I want to note here, though, Mika. One, I do know, in speaking with a source that is close to the judge and familiar with the judge's thinking, that this order has been written since early last week. So that's certainly notable because, of course, everything is tied to politics. The judge is running for re-election, and so this was written before he drew any opposing opponents in this race. The other thing, though, is that I understand that because he has already received threats, he waited until today to allow for proper security to be in place for him and his family. He has 2 young children, and that is another reason why we're getting this on Friday of the deadline. But certainly a big decision in this case, Mika.
And there's a lot more, including the response from the Trump camp. Trumpites are about to explode. Now, we'll say this. The judge, McAfee, he dropped some of Donald Trump's charges this week. Well, many Republicans praised him for dropping these charges. Also, Robert Patillo, attorney at law, is running against Judge McAfee in Fulton County. Judge McAfee has an opponent. Robert Patillo happens to be a dear friend of mine. He fills in on my radio show on occasion here in Atlanta. He is a real opponent to McAfee. There's more commentary. Here it is.
Laura, there is a lot at play in today's decision. Help us break it down for us. Some tough language in here as well.
Some tough language indeed, Kristen. This is not the result that the District Attorney Fani Willis wanted, but it's certainly not the fatal blow that it could have been if Donald Trump and his co-defendant had got their way. So let's remember what the original ask was. The ask was to have the DA removed completely from the case over an alleged ethical conflict of interest of having her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, her then boyfriend, former boyfriend, lead the Trump prosecution. Trump and his co-defendants had alleged that there was a financial entanglement, that the two were taking lavish vacations together, and that was all while the time that the state was actually paying his salary. That was the conflict that was alleged. The judge in this case this morning saying the defendants did actually not prove an alleged or did not prove an actual conflict of interest from all that financial entanglement. However, the judge is saying there is an appearance of conflict given how all of this played out, given all of the evidence that came out during the days-long hearing there in Georgia. The judge is saying the DA essentially has 2 options now, as you laid out, Kristen. She can either remove herself and her entire office from the case completely, which would be a severe blow, or she can remove Nathan Wade from the case, which is perhaps much easier to do, and anybody else could certainly step in his shoes as opposed to wiping out the entire prosecution team. There is certain language in here that if I'm the district attorney, I find very troubling. Some of the tone that the judge is using, talking about the allegations against her, but there's other language where in other ways he sort of exonerates her.
I will provide some context to that. If you recall, just a few days ago, I provided my exacting stance on this element known as disqualification, that the defense provided absolutely no proof that any conflict existed between the DA and their client, which, by the way, is the premise for the motion. There is no other premise. It doesn't matter if you believe she has violated some city or county ordinance. That's not part of the motion. With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show. Here's my commentary from back then. You see, I don't need my leaders to be perfect anymore. I'm out of that phase, been out of that phase for a long time. You see, Republicans don't need their leaders to be perfect either, i.e. Donald Trump, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, etc. So while we wax poetic about how we need leaders who are willing to hold the powerful accountable, I don't agree with every decision DA Fani Willis has made. I have publicly opposed Fani Willis in this city for decisions she has made as a prosecutor. I stand by it. But let's be very clear about this decision. She was willing to make the decision to do exactly what we all know would have happened to anyone else. If anyone else would have attempted to overturn a Georgia election, they would be prosecuted. If they would have made those phone calls and not have been a president of the United States at that time, they would have been arrested. They would have been charged with felonies because that is the law. You have somebody in position who's imperfect. Yes, we all are. There is no perfect leader among us. She files the motion. She goes through the processes. There is no allegation of violation of constitutional right. There is no allegation of violation of statutory dynamics. Everything was done by the book. You had a special purpose grand jury, looked at the evidence, said indict. Then you have a normative grand jury, looked at the evidence and provided a true bill of indictment. And then you have the formal bringing of the charges and the formal actual prosecution happening. Multiple people have already pleaded guilty. There is no allegation that the rights of the defendant have been violated. There is no allegation that somehow statutorily there was something missed. And here's the part, here's the icing on the cake. They cannot make any credible allegation that somehow Mr. Roman, the defendant, was mishandled. You know why? Guess who oversaw the process? Nathan Wade. Nathan Wade is the managing attorney that oversaw the process to make sure all of your I's were dotted and your T's were crossed. So while you can talk about qualifications, which by the way, the judge said they are not able to talk about the qualifications of Wade because Mr. Wade was well within his right to accept the appointment and Dave Fannie Willis was well within her right to make it. You cannot find any mistakes in the paperwork. So Mr. Wade actually is doing a good job. And according to the record, he has worked more hours than he was paid. All right, here we go. Let's put it up full mass. Per the AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Fulton County judge gave Dave Fannie Willis a choice. Either recuse yourself and your office from the election interference case against Donald Trump, or simply cut ties with the lead prosecutor and former lover, Nathan Wade. The decision would allow Willis, if special prosecutor Nathan Wade withdraws, to continue prosecuting the case against the presumptive GOP nominee for president and his 14 remaining co-criminal defendants. As the agency notes, it also could resolve a disqualification motion that has upended the monumental case for the last 2 months, turning it into a spectacle rather than an actual hearing. And I will say this, I have never seen a motions hearing last this long. I have never seen this. Even in my studies in law school, when we had to do the internships inside of courtrooms and work for attorneys at law firms, motions typically last less than an hour. A hearing, a day is, well, excessive. A week, unheard of. Weeks, never before have I witnessed a motions hearing last 4 weeks. The average trial lasts 5 days. So this was exhausting. But I will tell you this, the defense had absolutely no inclination to actually argue the motion. They wanted to muddy the waters, to discredit the messenger, to politically compromise the district attorney. This was about the jury or the potential jury. There's more. The choice is likely to be an easy one, according to NBC News. If Willis were to remove herself, the case would come to a halt, but having Wade leave will ensure the case continues without further delay. The judge said the prosecution, quote, cannot proceed until Willis makes a decision. Now, let me explain some of the options here. Typically, a motion will come with basically an appeals note, okay? This motion did not, which means you don't get to automatically, or it doesn't automatically go to an appellate process, which could delay this trial even more. If the prosecution or the defense would like to appeal this motion, they would have to file a motion to appeal the motion, and Judge McAfee has reign or authority over that motion. Likely, DA Fani Willis is not going to appeal this. She could continue to move forward, let Mr. Wade go and appeal the motion to bring him back. Likely not going to happen because of the delay it would create. The defense, however, may apply for an appeal. If they do so, McAfee gets to make the decision if the appeal moves beyond that motion for appeal. I know it's ironic, but that's the way it works. There's more. So Trump attorney Steve Sadow said in a statement, quote, "While respecting the court's decision, we believe that the court did not afford appropriate significance to the prosecutorial misconduct of Willis and Wade. We will use all legal options available as we continue to fight to the end to end this case, which should never have been brought in the first place," end quote. Willis's office did not immediately comment on the ruling. The judge found there was no actual conflict brought about by the relationship, a finding that would have required Willis to be disqualified. Quote, "Without sufficient evidence that the district attorney acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied." Let me explain what this means in very simple terms. The motion said DA Fani Willis hired Nathan Wade in order for Nathan Wade to take her out to dinner. That's basically what the motion said. That she utilized the amazing authority of being the DA to hire a special prosecutor for the sake of the special prosecutor to take her out to dinner. No one believed that. As a matter of fact, the defense didn't believe it because you know who they never produced to testify? A forensic accountant. They never produced a forensic accountant to testify that Nathan Wade's financial income was directly linked to any of these trips or to Fani Willis and the dinner because he was paid by the government. Typically, that's the first individual you put up under oath. They did not produce one. There's more. These findings is by no means an indication that the court condones the tremendous lapse in judgment or the unprofessional manner of the district attorney's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. Rather, it is the undersigned opinion that Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict for simply making bad choices, even repeatedly. And it is the trial court's duty to confine itself to the relevant issues and applicable law properly before it, he added. Now, we'll say this to Judge McAfee. He did wax poetic about the unprofessionalism of Fani Willis, which I find laughable because Donald Trump and his cronies will be well outside of the boundaries of professionalism. Let's see if McAfee comments on that in the future. But he also basically highlights that he questions the testimony of when the relationship started. Once again, McAfee, that seems out of bounds here, given the, as you call it, strict parameters of the law, of your authority. There's more. The judge did, however, also find, quote, "The prosecution is encumbered by the appearance of impropriety. As the case moves forward, reasonable members of the public could easily be left to wonder whether the financial exchanges have continued, resulting in some form of benefit to the DA, or even whether the romantic relationship has resumed," he wrote. "As long as Wade remains on the case, this unnecessary perception will persist." There's this amazing, we call it in spades a trump card, all right? No pun intended. The high joker. And the judge always has the ability to rule based on the appearance of conflict rather than evidence presented thereof. And this is what the judge has done, basically split the baby here. He has said in one instance, there is no evidence of a direct conflict of interest existing between the defendant and the prosecution's office, none. So we can't make a ruling based on that, but I can make a ruling based on the appearance of conflict between DA Fani Willis, special prosecutor Nathan Wade, and how the public may interpret what's happening here. So he makes a decision to say the prosecution has a choice to make. If Nathan Wade is no longer on the case, that appearance goes away. McAfee also suggested he was skeptical about Willis and Wade's testimony, that they did not start dating until after he was appointed to the case. He said, quote, reasonable questions about whether the district attorney and her hand-selected lead, special assistant district attorney, testified untruthfully about the timing of the relationship further underpin the finding of an appearance of impropriety and the need to make proportional efforts to cure it. All right. Now, Republicans have, they've lost their damn mind. They are really, really upset about this ruling. Let's put them up. Ronnie Jackson. Oh, Ronnie. Another politically motivated judge. Fani Willis should be disbarred. Her boyfriend prosecutor should be fired. And all charges need to be dropped. Americans are sick of these endless witch hunts. Election interference. I mean, these folks are literally talking like Donald Trump now. I mean, this is verbatim of what Donald Trump would say. I mean, they got the all caps down and everything. There's more. Let's go to Charlie Kirk. He's somewhere stewing. Even left-wing networks knew Fani Willis deserved to be removed from this case. Judge McAfee instead chose to be a coward and protect a woman he's donated to in the past. It's time for Georgia to use SB 332, which Governor Kemp signed into law just this week, and remove the rogue prosecutor in Fulton. Let me explain what Kirk is saying. Last year, there was a bill to create a committee in the state of Georgia to regulate the actions of prosecutors, elected prosecutors. Well, there was a question about the constitutional legality of this being permitted. Kemp was not a fan, but also did not holistically oppose. This year in the legislative session, it was brought up again with more teeth, more vigor, and a more ripe political climate for conservatives. Kemp signed a bill that creates a committee to regulate district attorneys elected by the people. And this committee, Republican appointed, can in fact remove prosecutors arbitrarily without any bipartisan agreement whatsoever. So that's what Kirk is talking about. There's more. Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says, Judge McAfee worked for Fani Willis and donated to her campaign and has now ruled that Fani can keep prosecuting Trump, but only if she removes her lover, Nathan Wade, off the case. Judge McAfee should recuse himself in the first place because of his obvious bias. Now, they weren't saying any of this at first. Fani Willis lied under oath in his courtroom. Fani and Wade conspired with the White House on the January 6th committee. Talk about RICO charges. Fani Willis overpaid her lover, Nathan Wade, as he had zero experience with RICO cases, abuse of taxpayer funds. And the Georgia Ethics Board needs to seriously investigate both Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. I filed multiple complaints. Isn't it ironic, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that you all were singing the praises of Judge McAfee when he dropped charges against Donald Trump? You all were singing the praises when he was selected as the person overseeing this case because, well, he was a member and is a member of the Federalist Society, appointed by a Republican governor, is a known Republican in this state. These were all check marks of approval. As soon as he makes a decision that is not 100% aligned with your political motivation, he should now be disbarred. He should no longer be a judge. He's involved in corruption. You see, this is what happens when you are affixed to a cult. You have to be aligned holistically to their thinking. There is no room for deviation. There's no room for independent thought. It's only MAGA now, as Don Jr. has told you. All right, Mr. Mayor, I know there was a lot to unpack. What say you?
Listen, it is amazing to me that now the appearance of a conflict is all the Republicans need. Surely they're going to get rid of Donald Trump as their nominee because the appearance of him in someone.
Right, the appearance of conflict, right.
The appearance, right? The appearance of him in someone has been met and also exceeded by two courts. the appearance that he may have broke the law, the appearance he may have violated the Constitution. So surely the Republicans are gonna get rid of him. No, they're not, because it's not an appearance thing with them. Just as you said, it's only about how much you support Trump. Patriotism for the Republican Party has been replaced with how much you support Trump. You could be a card, you can retire from the military, have 4 honorable discharges. It does not matter. The minute you say one thing against Trump, you are a leftist, anti-American communist. And that is the problem with our democracy. It is gone. It is not on the way out. It is already out. This is one of the leading parties in our countries saying that the judicial system has failed them epically because there's no conflict and they still want this person removed simply because she's bringing charges against their cult leader.
Yeah.
We are in serious trouble. Whether we win or lose, we have already lost as it pertains to our democracy. And turn down our justice system is absolutely ridiculous. 2 months on a motion that didn't prove anything is absolutely disgusting. And the fact that the judge may have had this ruling already last week just speaks to me even more about how willing he is to hold up this trial to muddy the water. It's disgusting, man.
Yeah, and as some have already said, this, the fact that he already had the motion ready to go and signed, but waited, speaks to him kind of weighing the politics here, which a judge is not supposed to. And also, I would say this. Charlie Kirk was correct. Many on the left, many pundits on the left were saying things that were completely adversarial to law. And I heard them on MSNBC, CNN, and other places. And I said, wait a minute. These individuals are pontificating adverse to what the law states. I don't know if they're reading Georgia statute, but based on Georgia statute, you cannot remove the DA. It is not conclusive unless evidence is presented of an actual conflict of interest against Mr. Roman, not among her office, but against Mr. Roman. All right. Okay. We will bring you updates as they come. I'm sure the DA's office will respond soon.